You think you guys are the only ones that like candy? The wrappers are the best part. Hello everyone, I'm your host Miranda Fritz and welcome back to another episode of Randa Easter Edition. I have a special guest this week for you. Before I get into the holiday talk, however, I hope everyone had an awesome, safe spring break. I know I tried to, and I think I succeeded. As I promised, I spent the majority of my spring break with my happy butt on the couch, catching up on my shows and watching a bunch of movies. But I also had a little adventure with a couple friends, and while it was fun, it was definitely an adventure. With this being our first grown-up trip without parents or family members, we decided to make it a mini trip down to Dallas, and I, being the crazy person I am, volunteered to drive. But no matter what you think about my driving, we still made it back in mostly one piece. I would call it a successful trip. Being the crazy kids we are, we went to the JFK exhibit, but not before we spent an extra 40 minutes trying to get to it because when we originally found it, we drove right past it. Then we spent about another 20 minutes trying to figure out the parking and if 20A on the ticket meant we had to park in number 20 parking spot, even though someone was in that spot. Finally, we just parked in one and hoped for the best, but we did double check with a guy we thought looked like a pretty respectable businessman before we left the parking lot, just to be safe. So we paid $10 to park for 2 hours, and we spent 20 minutes of that time figuring it out. And we still had another 10 minutes to walk to the actual exhibit. So after all that, it's safe to say we didn't make it all the way through the exhibit before we had to leave so that my car wouldn't get towed. And the irritating / funny thing was we discovered that we could have parked in the JFK parking for $10 and stayed all day if we hadn't have missed it the first time. Either way, it was still a fun adventure, and I can proudly say I did not break down and call my mom when we couldn't figure out how to park. We also went to a gay strip where we saw some furries, which absolutely terrified me, extremely dark bathrooms that had to put signs on the doors that said "one person to a stall, please," and a very high-class drag show. And I mean like RuPaul Drag Race kind of quality. And for those of you who don't know, because I definitely didn't, furries are a subculture group interested in fictional anthropomorphic animal characters with human personalities and characteristics, which basically just means they are a group of people who really like dressing up in animal mascot costumes, which is totally cool. I'm just terrified of things where I can't see their face, like Mickey Mouse and the Easter Bunny in the mall. I always try to avoid walking by the bunny picture area in the mall when it's up because I forget that I'm older now and they probably won't wave me over to take pictures with them, but if he did, that would be extra creepy. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, and no statement is nor true for this week's holiday. And while many of us think of bunnies, eggs, and candy when they hear the word Easter, it actually has a much more deeper-rooted meaning within it. Easter is actually considered a religious holiday, and while it is now widely celebrated by many with Easter egg hunts and family feasts, it began as a day of remembrance for the fulfilled prophecy of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And for those of you who might not know, basically what happened was Jesus was having the Passover meal, also known as the Last Supper. During the meal, Jesus told his disciples one of them would betray him. And he was right. The next day, poo-poo head Judas goes and tells the angry mob who Jesus is. They grab him and crucify him on a cross, basically because they didn't like him. He was beat and whipped and had to carry his own cross up the hill. He was then nailed to the cross through his hands and feet, with a sign nailed above him that said, "The King of the Jews." they mocked and ridiculed him as he was crucified alongside two thieves, who also ridiculed him as they died. After his death, Jesus' mother, Mary, and her husband, Joseph, wrapped Jesus in cloth and buried him in a tomb blocked by a giant rock. And on the third day, when his mother returned to the tomb, the rock had been moved, and Jesus was alive again. And boom, that's the resurrection story. Well, the short version anyway. And while you might assume a holiday based on Jesus' resurrection wouldn't leave much room for non-religious traditions, Easter is considered one of the most intertwined with pagan symbolism and ritual. An example of this is the Easter Bunny. While some of us might picture a cross when we think of Easter, a majority of the population think rabbits or ducks or eggs or even peeps, if you're into that kind of thing. But many might think why bunnies are so popular and universal for Easter. Well, besides the obvious reason that they are just plain adorable. And speaking of mischievously adorable, here's my baby bun now, in a new basket that I bought him, which he seems to really enjoy. He just sits in it and chews on it for a long time. There really are a few reasons rabbits are a mainstream symbol for Easter. And not to get rated R or anything, but it's basically because they do it all the time. Rabbits are known for fertility and making lots of babies. And since Easter usually occurs near the beginning of spring, it's a representation of new life. Another reason is the fact that rabbits burrow. The idea is that Christians saw rabbits coming out of their burrows as a representation of Jesus emerging from his tomb. The final possibility is the fact that rabbits are the ancient symbol for the moon, which is only relevant if you know what the moon has to do with Easter. So for those of you who might not have noticed, Easter comes at different times each year. And that is basically because it follows the full moon, the vernal equinox, and since the date for that is different every year, so is the day we celebrate Easter. So rabbits were a symbol for the moon, and Easter is based on the moon's cycle. Another big hitter for Easter are eggs. Many ancient cultures actually saw eggs as a symbol for life, and many of those cultures, such as Hindus, Egyptians, and Persians, believed the world began as an enormous egg. Ancient Chinese were known to give eggs as gifts during spring festivals, and even early Christians began recognizing eggs as a symbol for life. They would bring eggs to church to be blessed with holy water, and in the 12th century, eggs were authorized for special use on Easter, called benedictio ovorum, which basically just means the coloring of eggs. And many believe the Crusaders were responsible for bringing this tradition to the West. As far as egg hunting goes, no one really knows for certain where that originated, but many believe it stems from a German tradition where children would hunt for hidden pretzels around Easter time. And why this wasn't a tradition for me as a German kid, I don't know, but I will now forever be upset that I was deprived from searching for hidden pretzels. But beyond all the mainstream department store marketing, Easter is known to have a special place for many families who have developed their own traditions. For my family, I usually try to make sure we have at least an Easter egg hunt for the young ones because that is one of the best traditions I remember doing as a child. I do all the egg decorating and stuffing and hiding, although I did tell them all my rabbit was the real Easter bunny. I love leading the young ones around and helping them find the eggs before the older kids grab them all. I also try to make sure the kids get a basket of some sort filled with grass and a few eggs with dollars in it, along with a few dollar knickknacks like pencils, erasers, and little stuffed animals. But enough about me. Here's what a few other students are doing for Easter this year on the Random Cam.
Little bunny foo-foo hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and bopping them on the head. Then came the white angel. She said, little bunny foo-foo, I don't want to see you scooping up the field mice and bopping them on the head.
I'll be working on Easter, and it's okay, I guess. Lots of candy.
Okay, so normally I just go to church and then we color eggs at home or something like that. But that's basically, celebrating Jesus' birth or death. My bad. That's Christmas.
Cut that one out!
Jesus' death.
Jesus
read the Bible a lot.
For Easter, I usually go to church, and then we'll like have a family dinner and lunch, and we'll hang out, do an Easter egg hunt, color eggs, just the little stuff.
I just love hearing everyone's traditions, and even the not so traditional, like working. Unfortunately, my family has run into the same problem since my parents are working on Easter. And if we don't plan the holiday, then it probably isn't going to happen. So I guess my friend and I will just have to take senior pictures instead, which is fun too. But whether you celebrate Easter for religious reasons or for the candy, I hope you learned a little bit more about the popular spring holiday. I hope everyone has a good one. And just fair warning, you may be tempted to buy a duck or even a rabbit for Easter. I know it because I've done it. From personal experience, they were both cute at first, but then they keep you up all night because one is quacking and the other will chew everything. But some people like that kind of thing. Happy Easter, everyone. Bring in the dancing Aggies.